with your filmography, one of the things that I really enjoy about it is that it's so diverse that it'll be a drama, it'll be a comedy, it'll be TV show, it'll be movie, leading role, supporting role. When it comes to that diversity, how much of that is an intentional choice to have a bunch of variety in your roles, and how much of that is just choosing roles that resonate with you?
Yes, being the answer to that, because you never know what's going to come across your proverbial desk, right? Some actors do one thing really well and they get typecast and they never get offered anything else. I've been very lucky and fortunate to get a lot of different kinds of opportunities. People that just kind of take a chance on you and they don't necessarily say that they saw you do this exact thing, but they believe you can do it. So that's why I've done a variation of, I played like a hip hop executive in a Netflix movie with Anthony Anderson. I played a ranch hand, sort of a softy, soft-spoken farmer in this movie Americana that comes out this year. I played a serial killer. I played a karate enthusiast on Cobra Kai. It's like, it's cool. You get to play a lot of stuff. And I mean, the guys that I admire the most, sometimes, you look at their filmography, you go, wow, how did Gary Oldman play Dracula and Churchill? How did he get to do all this?
Mhm.
And I feel very fortunate to have a microcosm of that right now.
So with Michael Larson and this movie in general, I always love movies where you watch it and as soon as it's done, you're like, oh man, I got to look up what actually happened, what was real. And with Michael Larson, he had a wild, bizarre life. How did you approach trying to make someone that was so complicated and shady at times so sympathetic in the film?
No, that's a group effort. I think the way that we tell the story and the way it was, scripted or crafted on the page, it's very much a story that says this is a man who's hurting and he means well, but the intentions aren't matching the execution.
Mhm.
And there's some bit of ego and waywardness that is commandeering this would-be vehicle of a human being. I think he says a lot of this is for his family, but I think he's battling addiction. There's the
Mhm.
gambling addiction, the thrill of getting caught, the thrill of pulling it off. It's quite like a low stakes bank heist in a way. Um, and I think men especially are prone to becoming addicted to power and thrill, and you see that in the highest offices of the land, and the folks at Enron and Wall Street. But then you also see it in this sense, which is a guy going from state to state, pulling off little grifts. And I think he looks at himself as being kind of heroic when really
Mhm.
there's also quite a bit of cowardice in his conflict avoidance with what's waiting for him back home.
Mhm. And with Larson as this guy that, like I said, was just so fascinating, what do you think audiences will find most unbelievable about this story that is where reality is stranger than fiction?
Yeah, I think that the fact that he didn't screw up at all,
Mhm.
I think it shot over like 2 episodes, or at least they aired it in 2 episodes. And he got to $110,000 in change. I mean, think about the littlest bit of hesitation, you lose all that money with a whammy on the board. So it's like that alone to me is just mind-numbingly crazy. I think people will be drawn in by that, and I think it's also a great time capsule piece because you get to see the 1980s in a more realistic fashion,
Mhm.
and I think our cast is pretty cool and eclectic in and of itself. It kind of feels like the Muppets or something, where it's like one of every kind of look
Mhm. Yeah.
barreling in and out of the film, trying to make sense of what's going on. It's really funny in that way visually.
And one final question on here, on kind of more of a personal note. So I loved Cobra Kai because I grew up watching Karate Kid, but then beyond that, it turned into a show that I watched with my daughter. And so it kind of
Oh,
turned into something
cool.
special for me of like, there's not a lot of shows that my daughter wants to watch with me. And this was one of those shows for me. Now that it's kind of come to a close, what does it mean being part of one of these multi-generational franchises? What does that mean to you kind of hindsight?
It means a lot to me, man. And you said it right there with the idea that two generations of people are enjoying it, and you're introducing your daughter uh, to that world the same way fathers and sons or mothers and
Mhm,
daughters play records, and they go, "Man, you don't know Seals and Crofts, you don't know Led
mhm,
Zeppelin. Let me introduce you." So it's fun to introduce people to stuff, and I think um, before the Marvels came calling and I got to do Fantastic Four or whatever else comes,
mhm.
my way someday, I I will never forget that Cobra Kai and Karate Kid, that was the first sort of cinematic universe to invite me in and treat me like an
Mhm.
equal. And that means a lot, man. It means a lot. And I'm glad that the show maintained quality over time.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed the film. As I said, it's one of those movies, as soon as it ended, I just couldn't grab my phone fast enough because I just wanted to look up every single detail about the incident, about the people. So thank you for bringing this story to life.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Tell your daughter that Stingray says hello.
I will. I will show her this video as quick as I can. Thank you so much for your time. I wasn't familiar with this story before watching the film, and I always love these kind of movies where it tells this story about something where reality is so much stranger than fiction. Were you first exposed to this story and controversy, and what made you want to tell it as a film?
Um, like to think that it came to me. I usually go to Goodwills and thrift shops when I'm writing because I like finding film negatives and photos, just because it's good inspiration for characters. And I found this VHS tape, and I played it, and it was an episode of Press Your Luck. And then as I did some research, I found the scandal. And I was like, oh, this must be a really good movie. And when I looked for the movie, there was no movie. So we decided to make it.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that as soon as you hear about it, you're like, what? How did this crazy thing happen? And why has there not been a movie made about this before? With that in mind, what was the biggest challenge in adapting this real life event into a compelling film?
Well, we know that we have the 40-minute clip that you can find on YouTube, which is like the two tapings back to back.
Mhm,
But we didn't know what happened in the commercial breaks. We didn't know what happened at the audition, and most importantly, we didn't know what happened in the control room.
mhm.
So that's when we came to dramatize and to create some antagonists, because we knew that the executives in the control room must have been losing their mind. So that's why the reason why we focused on that antagonist protagonist conflict between the game floor and the control room.
Kind of somewhat on the idea of the research side to it of after anytime I watch a movie like this, as soon as it ends, the first thing I do is go to Wikipedia and look up everything I can find about it. And one of the kind of sad details is most of the key people involved have died. Was there anyone that you could go to that's still alive that had those first person accounts of a little bit of the flavor of what was going on?
Yes, absolutely. So we were lucky enough to find Bill Carruthers Jr., who's the son of the
Mhm.
creator of the show, and he was our creative consultant. So he was able to he gave us a bunch of really good information about the day he was in the room when Michael auditioned. So just as an example, the plate that he brings into the audition,
Mhm.
that was something that the real Michael actually did. He was a great asset to have, and he was making sure that we would share the script with him every time we had a new version to make sure that things were firing.
Mhm. And just kind of looking at the story of Michael Larson, what surprised you most when kind of researching him, the events of that day? What kind of popped the most?
Um, Definitely that he used the money to open a fake lottery, and that he sold a bunch of fake lottery tickets with that money, and then he had to run away to the Everglades because of this. But actually, no, the thing that I actually have in my mind every single time I speak about this guy that I find incredible is that he changed the winning money into $1 bills, and he
Uh-huh.
covered the walls in his house like a wallpaper with dollar bills. I think that image is incredible.
So even on that point, even if you're like I'd read about him doing the $1 bills and some of the other schemes. I didn't realize did the part about covering as well. It's like when you're making the movie, there's so many weird other details about him that you could expand. How did you decide how to narrow the focus and just kind of zero in? And how much were you tempted to try and touch on every bizarre thing about this guy?
Yeah. Well, obviously, the first time that we wrote the script, it was more of like a Catch Me If You Can type of
Hmm.
movie. There was like a multi-city thriller that
Hmm.
like much bigger. But we fell in love with the challenge of keeping it in one location to create the boiling cooker type of thriller.
Yeah, pressure cooker. Yeah, pressure cooker.
Exactly, the pressure cooker. So that's why we were like, okay, yeah, this is enough. And just because we found that there was enough drama with the executives and the game floor, we thought it would
Mhm.
be a great opportunity.
And one final kind of question on here. In making the movie, you had this really complicated man that had a lot of obvious faults, but the movie's able to make him sympathetic. How did you work with Paul to make such an obviously flawed man still sympathetic?
Yeah, that was the challenge. So we spoke a lot about showing him like the main most important thing that everyone can relate to is wanting to be a good person, because at the end of the day he does want to, he wants to get
Mhm.
his family back together. The means in which he wants to do it, that's
Mhm.
the flawed part. So as long as we were able to show that he in the end he had a big heart, we were going to be able to show all his flaws. So it was the contrast of this that we focused on.
Thank you so much for your time. And what's the biggest compliment I can give a film like this is as soon as it ended, I just grabbed my phone and wanted to dive into every last detail because you brought to life this bizarre story in such a fun fashion. So thank you so much for the film, and I'm excited to tell people about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sean.